So tonight we're going to have Liz Marshall, who many of us are familiar with. She is an award-winning Canadian documentary filmmaker, and she has written, directed, and produced broadcast, theatrical, grassroots, and cross-platform documentaries shot around the world, largely focusing on social justice and environmental issues. Since the 90s, Marshall has collaborated with award-winning filmmakers and producers to explore a range of significant global issues, including animal rights, the right to water, HIV/AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa, gender inequality, war-affected children, sweatshop labor, censorship affecting writers and journalists, and others. She has a track record of producing successful projects focused on challenging and international subject matter. She is best known for her celebrated feature-length films Water on the Table and The Ghost in Our Machine, which illuminate social political issues through character-driven cinematic perspectives. Water on the Table features water rights activist, author, and public figure Maud Barlow. The Ghost in Our Machine features animal rights activist, photojournalist, and author Joanne McOlter, who we've had here in the past. And both films pose significant questions about our human relationship to the natural world. Tonight, Liz will be discussing her personal journey to animal consciousness and delivering the findings from the impact report on the Ghost in Our Machine. Yay. So we're very pleased to have her tonight.
All right, well, it's great to be here, and I'll just say that actually this afternoon, the official formal 33-page impact report was released to the film's website.
Nice.
And what I'm going to show you this evening with this PowerPoint is actually the condensed version, so it's a little bit more digestible for a presentation. It's less verbose, and I've only presented this one other time, and that was a few weeks ago here in Toronto at something called the Savvy Producer Conference through the Documentary Institute, Toronto Documentary Institute, that I'm involved in as a filmmaker. So actually in that presentation I got really emotional presenting the findings from the impact report, because this has been, for those of you who know me and who are familiar with The Ghost in Our Machine, which is probably everyone in the room, this film has been about 4.5 years of my life, and sort of working with professional researchers, the Humane Research Council. They're based out of Washington State, and they work specifically with animal advocates to help with research and with impact. So they work with all the big and small animal rights groups in the States, and I believe they're working with Toronto Pig Safe right now to basically gauge, to measure the impact of whether it be a film. So the Humane Research Council has actually never worked with a filmmaker before, so this is the first film that they've conducted research for. But they're very familiar with the issue, the nuance involved in the issue, which is one of the main reasons I wanted to work with the Humane Research Council. For those of us committed to this issue, we understand that there's a lot of nuance. It's almost its own language, and there's a certain way in which we grapple with that language and with the content to be able to attract a broader audience, and that's something I think most of us are scratching our heads about on a regular basis, and trying to broaden the awareness and the circle of compassion. So that's certainly the motivation with The Ghost in Our Machine, was to use the power of cinema and documentary storytelling to try to attract a broader global audience to this subject matter. So the impact report was just put together. Like I said, working with the Humane Research Council. I was funded by the Bertha Brittbelt Connect Fund, which is the logos there on the bottom on the lower right side. and then Liz Mars is my company. But just quickly, the Birth of Brit Connect Fund is the only outreach and engagement fund in Europe that supports social issue documentaries, and this is the only animal rights film they've ever supported. Right now, for example, they're working with the filmmakers who just won the Academy Award for Citizen 4. So they work with huge films that are primarily focused on human and environmental rights. So it's quite something that they got behind this project. So, you know, really proud of that. All right, how do I do this? There. Okay, so I encourage everyone to, after tonight, you know, you can go to the film's website, theghostosinourmachine.com, I'll remind you again, and you can actually download the PDF of the 34-page report. So it's longer, and you can study it and share it and wrap your head around it. But basically, to begin, this is an excerpt from my director's statement, and it's really the big question that's posed in the film, and it's one that as activists we all grapple with when we come into our consciousness, into our awareness about animal use and the pervasive use of animals in society, and why is it that we are blind to it, and why is it that we in this room, maybe I'm not speaking for everyone, so I don't want to do that, but why is it that those of us who have removed our blinders, how did that happen? And how can we help remove other people's blinders? So that, it's like a conundrum, it's like a social dilemma. It's like a giant question mark. And I wanted the film to actually pose that giant question mark for people, so that by the end of the film, their blinders are removed and they're asking themselves the same question that I asked myself right here when I started developing this film. So when I started developing the film, I thought I was fairly conscious around animal issues, but when I started to delve deeply into the subject and learn more about it, I realized how blind I was and how prevalent and pervasive the issue is, and it was very overwhelming. I had a grief response to it, and I realized that conceptually I wanted the film to be able to inspire a grief response for people. Not to traumatize audiences, absolutely not, but to touch people's hearts and open people's eyes. And I think that's what Joanne MacArthur's photos do for us if we take the time to look into the eyes of the animals in her incredible photos. And for those who have seen, how many have seen the film? Just raise your hand if you've seen it. So almost everyone. All right. So the film features Joanne MacArthur, who is an animal rights photojournalist. So her photographs they sort of run through the movie and punctuate scenes and moments. What the critics said, this is just a few of the mainstream quotes, and it's important to put the mainstream big corporate media out there and what they've said, because of course that's the hardest audience to reach. And like I said, when we set the intention at the beginning of making the film in 2010, was when I started developing it, I realized that I didn't want to create a film that would be marginalized, like the issue is marginalized and stigmatized. I wanted to make a film that could try, anyway, to reach a broader audience. And so the media is a big part of that. So who saw the film? And these numbers basically are from April 2013, when it was released here in Toronto at the Hot Docs International Film Festival, up until February 2015, when we sold it to Netflix in the US. And this is like a tally of all the different countries. So I like the top sentence the best. So 1,816 cities, 92 countries, and 6 continents. So that's pretty great. That was a lot of work, and it wouldn't have been possible without all of the supporters and friends of the project, and the remarkable level of support that we experienced from the animal advocacy community, and we'll get into those details. I keep going the wrong way. So the making of The Ghosts in Our Machine was a shareable and personable journey designed to attract and sustain a broad spectrum of animal advocates over the lifespan of the project. So kind of a traditional way of making a film is that you release it when it's done and people learn about it then. But what we did with The Ghosts in Our Machine is that we started a Facebook page and the first iteration of a website in phase 1 development. And that was obviously very intentional to gather attention and support and community throughout the process. And in fact, as the writer-director of the project, that helped me tremendously in the way I wanted to shape the project, was learning from the global community. That was a remarkable journey to engage in. And by the way, these amazing photographs are Joanne's. That's Boydston from Farm Sanctuary. He's in the film, actually. He died. But he has the pink bandage on his foot, and he's walking in the snow. That scene in the film. Anyway. So phase 1 of the campaign for the film lasted a couple of years. And the unfolding journey of The Ghosts in Our Machine. So there were sort of different ways in which The Ghosts in Our Machine was communicated. It was through short segments called ghost stories, which was a way to introduce audiences early on while the film was being made. All of this is while the film was being made. Introduce audiences early on to the animals themselves, to meet the animals, and to for non-vegan, non-animal rights people to tweak people's awareness about the sentience and the suffering of non-human animals. And that was always the most important aspect of the narrative, even though Joanne is at the center as the human anchor and entry point of the film. The greater meaning, of course, in the backdrop of her story is the sentience and the suffering of a cast of animal characters in the film. So we learned that this was actually an effective way to communicate this issue because people would feel a connection to the animals by looking into their eyes and getting to know their stories. And then phase 2 was our world premiere at Hot Docs. And then we went on to have a North American theatrical release, which some of you or all of you might recall. That was a pretty intense time. We had an Oscar qualifying limited theatrical release in the US, and we had an Indiegogo campaign that supported that. Probably some of you supported that. We chose to have an Oscar qualifying campaign because to qualify for the Academy, you have to fulfill certain criteria, and in doing that, it met our agenda for this film, which was to get the subject on the radar. So, we had the LA Times, the New York Times, the Village Voice, and other big US publications and critics review the film. And they were not all favorable, by the way. But most of them were great. And on that subject for a minute, the thing that pisses me off is that there's something called Rotten Tomatoes, and it's an aggregator.
Yeah.
And filmmakers have no control over it, and neither do publicists. It aggregates, so it pulls in accredited reviews. And so it's pulled in only 8, although there's many for Ghosts. And it's given us a 50% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So if you Google the film, the first thing that you'll see is the Rotten Tomatoes rating of 50%. So the average person looking at that would think, oh, it's not a very good film, or it's not worth my time. When in fact, there's the positive reviews outweigh the negative reviews. So try to figure out how to... It's optics, right? So it's too bad. Okay, and then phase 3, which happened after that very robust North American theatrical release, which really was incredible, the phase 2, before I go on to phase 3. Phase 2, we had 7 of the US, like 7 of the biggest animal groups in the US get behind us, and they committed their support, their sort of social media marketing muscle to the project. So in total, we reached 7.7 million people in 2 months through online marketing. We didn't pay for that. Marketing, you always think you have to, we paid for publicists. We had 2 publicists. We had a grassroots animal rights publicist in the US called Eva Lotus. They were brilliant, and they targeted the grassroots. And then we had a publicist for all of North America, and I've used them before on my other films, to target the bigger film critics. So we went from the bottom up, the top down type of thing, to try to get as much attention for the film as we could. And that was the strategy. And then phase 3 was a community screenings campaign and this impact evaluation, which we'll get into. And that lasted over a year. And I did that through my company. It was a lot of work, and it was incredible. I did a lot of traveling with the film. I went to over 60 cities, and Joanne as well. We traveled a lot together, and we traveled really well together, in case you're wondering. We were always like, oh, it's so good we actually get along. So just a few quotes, I guess. Actually, in the longer report, I took Bill Maher out because I don't like his politics right now. Even though that's a good quote, but he pisses me off right now for a number of reasons.
Who?
Bill Maher. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's important to have an evergreen quality with a film so that partner groups can use the film as a tool. And that's what we're seeing, is that a lot of different animal groups around the world they own the film and they use it for ongoing screenings and for education and outreach. And that is the kind of sustainability plan that is really important when you're conducting a campaign like this, because there's a certain point where you just need to stop, and catch your breath and go, okay, I really need to let this go, and let the activists and the educators and the learners, the people, take it over. And that's what's happening now. And there's an expression in the film industry which I love, which is that your film has wings, and Ghosts definitely has a large wingspan.
Or your baby grown up?
With babies grown up. Let the baby go, yeah. So, That is Abby. Have you guys met Abby? She's rescued in the film by Melanie, and she's an incredible dog. She was a former teaching lab dog, research, used for research. So I'm going to talk to you now about the impact evaluation, because that was the part where I partnered with the Humane Research Council, and it was really, really interesting. I thought of, maybe putting the film online on Animal Rights Day in December, and using that as an opportunity to have momentum, and then Che Green, who runs the Humane Research Council, suggested that we use it as an opportunity to actually survey people. And our target was 500 people. We thought if we can get 500 people, new viewers, into a database, and then conduct a long-form survey a month later with them, we'll be happy. Well, we got 4,500 people, and it almost crashed our website. And most of those people, over 90%, were new viewers. So, isn't that amazing? That was really cool. And that was within a window of 72 hours. And then what the Humane Research Council did is what they do best, which is that they were able to use that database, and we co-wrote, designed a long-form impact survey that had open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. And then a month later, January 2015, the Humane Research Council followed up, and 23% of the viewers from December engaged in the long-form survey. And he had said that he would expect maybe 5%. That's what you tend to kind of rely on, is 5%. But we had 23%. And the open-ended questions, there was no word limit. And it's amazing the kinds of things that people wrote. I mean, the level of reflection. And also over the holiday season, where people were facing, having their blinders removed and facing all the products around them, all the animal products, was a very kind of perfect time to have this campaign. So, here are the results. We know that 58% of viewers are already animal advocates. So we can use the controlled survey that we conducted, we can use that and hang our hat on it. So we can say, because this is how research is done, vegan research. We can say that, authoritatively, we can say it authoritatively that 58% of viewers of the Ghosts in Our Machine around the world are already animal advocates. So that's our core audience. And that's something to celebrate, because without that core audience, we wouldn't be where we are. But also what that means is look at what a significant percentage of people that are viewing the film that are not animal advocates. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. And then of the non-vegan participants who viewed the film, these are the changes, modifications in behavior that we're seeing. Which, it would be nice to see a much higher percentage of people that transition to veganism. But I don't want to sound negative, because 14% is phenomenal. I mean, if 100,000 people have seen the film, what's 14% of that? 100, what is that?
14,000.
140,000 people?
Oh, did you say 100,000 people?
Yeah.
14,000.
14,000,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, so 14,000 people. That's great.
That's fantastic.
Right? So, we can just look at this for a minute. And maybe this can sort of be the sort of touchstone of the discussion that we want to have tonight. is, change that can happen. How do you create that change? I'm sure with a film like Earthlings, it would be like 95% went vegan, but
How many people watch it?
probably 95% of those people are already animal advocates, right? I don't know that for a fact. Based on what I hear in talking with Sean Monson, the director, and I'm guessing, but maybe I'm wrong.
The 11%, is that activism? Is that what that's referring
Yeah,
to?
activism. So we've created more activists. And then the 61%, which is the majority of the non-vegan participants, have reduced animal products. That's amazing. So anyway, we can come back to this slide. We can talk about that more. About that spectrum of change and what that means, and the whole sort of controversy within the movement around baby steps, incremental change versus non-baby steps versus, we can talk about that. But what's really cool for us is knowing that this is actually what the film is responsible for, So there's more stats. I love this page. So 96% of people that saw the Ghosts in Our Machine believe that animal rights is an important social justice issue. This was an important question that I insisted was in the survey. And Shay didn't understand at first. And I said, because I come from, as a filmmaker, I come from other social movements. And I know that animal rights is stigmatized and marginalized. And if this film can do one thing, I want it to be able to lessen that chasm, that gap between social movements, the silos that exist. And I want this film to illuminate this subject matter so that people really get that it's as important as any other social movement. And so that is a statistic that I'm incredibly happy about. And that the film positively influenced the attitudes of 92% of viewers regarding their belief that all non-human animals are conscious and capable of feeling pleasure, pain, fear, and attachment. That's a significant number too, because we're still dealing with, in society, we're still at large dealing with the reality that animals have been reduced to tools for production, and that, we wear blinders. So to help remove people's blinders and show people, touch people's hearts and minds, to say animals are sentient beings is, I think, also a very important part of what the film is trying to do. It's certainly what Joanne's work is trying to do. So those are great, because attitudinal change creates behavioral change. And it looks as though attitudinal change is quite dramatic after seeing the film. To get people to actually change their behavior, I'm sure there's people that write PhD thesis on this. I don't understand why it's so difficult for humans to change, but it is. And we do change. But it's also very difficult.
So these questions were asked 1 month after the film.
Yeah. Actually, more like 7 weeks. Yeah.
Because I can understand right after the film. I'm just
No, because we had it's better for it to sink in.
Yeah.
Right? Also, by the way, these are, I should have mentioned that under 1,000 former viewers who had seen the film over a year and a half previous also engaged in the survey, because it was still with them. And that was important too. Yeah. All right, so this is cool for the doc industry, doc filmmaker world, because 94% of the viewers consider docs to be powerful tools for advancing social movements. I was super excited to see that part because, of course, documentary is on the rise. I mean, sadly, what we're seeing actually is that documentary is on the rise and funding is on the decline, which is really awful. But anyway, that's a wonderful statistic. So, so the community screenings campaign was all about capacity building. And those relationships have been building over time. They weren't totally fresh when the community screenings campaign started. They were in the works. But that kind of capacity building is important to the sustainability of a film. And for the community, the film is a tool, right? So lots of people make films because they want it to get into a festival and they're just obsessed with making a film, and they don't necessarily harness the opportunity to actually use the film as a tool. There's many different types of filmmakers out there. I believe that documentary films can be powerful tools, and that in that capacity building, those relationships are vital. And it's just going to continue to spread. So these partners, mostly North America, it's now spreading to Brazil and to parts of Asia, which is great. In fact, the film is available now in Portuguese, Spanish, French, German, on iTunes, and anywhere in the world. So that's great to have that. So online engagement, can't underestimate the power of online engagement. I don't know how campaigns, globalized campaigns, were even possible before the internet. Like when you think about that, like 20 years ago, how do you, I don't know. Obviously, I mean, it was.
It happened somewhere.
It happened like.
We have television.
Yeah, but the internet
Before
is.
television.
Yeah, before. So yeah.
Radio and television.
Yeah, radio and television. That's true, and the media, but. Social media is the people's media, right? Citizen media. So this is the challenge that I was talking about that we're all painfully aware of. And it was great having the Humane Research Council on board because they actually have, they've done huge surveys and research on to be able to measure how many people actually in society consider themselves consider animals to be part of an obligation, a moral obligation. So that's actually language from them. So most people consider themselves an animal advocate. Okay. And this is the disconnect, right, that we grapple with. So, majority of consumers believes that we have an obligation to avoid harming animals, yet the vast majority of consumers also participate in animal suffering. So this was the greatest challenge in actually making and releasing the film, because this human disconnect would manifest in, when we would pitch funders or when we would pitch distributors to take on the film, or when we would pitch the film to get reviewed. It would play out. So people would either be really intrigued and interested, or they wouldn't respond to us at all.
Afraid.
Yeah. In fact, some of the even senior critics that reviewed the film, this one guy talked about meat the entire review. He didn't even review the film. And that one, that was just unbelievable. I said to someone at a Q&A, I said, can a student write an essay on how the film has been reviewed? And we've cataloged over 140 reviews and interviews on our website. It's called Press. You open that page on the film's website, and there's over 140 reviews, and I want someone to analyze it critically, and I think that would be interesting in and of itself. Right, and there's that guy. It's difficult to comment upon a documentary like The Ghosts in Our Machine as it advocates an important issue regarding our very nature of the relationship we have with our food. So we were striking that chord all the time. But I don't want to just sound cynical about it, because so many people wanted to review the film. So many people watched the film. So it's great. So these are some achievements, like kind of the main ones, I guess. And actually, when I did this presentation at the Documentary Institute conference, this was the page that when I was reading Joe's quote out loud, I almost started crying. Actually, I did sort of cry, because I just felt very moved by what she said. And when you make a character-driven documentary with a person at the center of the film, you hope that the film can be a platform for that person's work. And so, really the legacy of the film is many things, but really it's that it's given Joe's work a real boost. And that's great, because We Animals is her life work. She'll always do that, And there we are. So, that's it. And I guess I didn't need my notes.
Absolutely not.
So we can turn a light on. How do I'm PC illiterate. I don't know how to log out of there.
But you just want to this.
Or maybe put it closer to the page that I said in my talk.
That's really interesting. The marketing of the film. Yeah.
Why don't I put this one up?
Full page,
You have a PC?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you talked about the film having, do you want to sit up here?
With you.
Oh, I'll be the. I was going to turn the camera.
I don't want to sit in front of the numbers. I'll sit back here.
Okay.
No,
yeah, wherever.
All right.
I was
Okay.
struck by what you said about the film having wings.
Yeah.
Or legs, or whatever metaphor you want to use.
Legs and wings.
Yeah, it's going places for a long time. Some of us have been paying attention happily to the renewed interest or new interest for some people in cowspiracy with the California drought, and it's interesting. That's a movie that's very topical, right? Because it's zeroing in on this issue of the moment, of the decade, millennium, end of the world, whatever you want to call it, and it's a very statistic-heavy movie. It's a powerful movie in its own way, but I'm so glad it was made. But Ghosts in the Machine feels a little bit more like the fundamental news of what's going on, about what's been going on for thousands of years. The storytelling Ghosts is, apart from the newer research applications of the animals, maybe, it's just the old story. It's the story of our relationship with animals, told very simply and powerfully, and that story will be there as long as as that relationship is.
Yeah. I was wondering if, because I think, all these different films have an impact. That's amazing. There's Cowspiracy here, there's different ways of having an impact. Ghost for me was the most artistic of all those films. So I've seen Ghost, I've seen it all the times. Like Joanne she doesn't want me to see it anymore. And what I do now is I probably spend more time looking at the cinematography. Like I look at the, 1 minute we're looking at a page and then we're up at the sky. 1 minute we're looking at, I can remember all of these transitions are beautiful. So I was wondering if that, within the artistic community, did that pull in people who might not normally have watched Cowspiracy or watch it?
Definitely, like cinephiles and photographers and filmmakers.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So because it did well in the documentary world.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And as a documentary, that's not common for me to see.
Okay.
Those kind of transitions.
Right.
Right? Because that's really.
Yeah.
I think I've seen it 7 times or something.
She's memorized
8 or 9. I know.
Yeah.
That's all.
What's going on with documentaries now? I got the Hot Docs brochure or guide, and I was looking through this time quite curiously for how many were animal-focused docs. And I've been following the Blur Cinema. I don't know if you want to comment on camera about this, but I've been following the Blur Cinema. I used to have a membership, and I used to go all the time, and then I started noticing that it seemed like there was a run of pretty great animal-centered documentaries over the last 5 or 10 years, and I don't remember any playing at the Blur. And I even when Cowspiracy came out, I called them and emailed them and asked them if they'd seen it yet. And this was before it had been generally released, and encouraged them to look into showing it for the Blur. And then just like the line of communication went dead. And I'm not constructing any kind of conspiracy theory about what's going on with the Blur cinema management, but certainly going through the catalog for Hot Docs this year is very disappointing. If you go to the subject index, there are dozens of films, right? And under animals there are 4. And if you go and read the capsule reviews of them, none of them really sound like they're going to be animal-centered, right? Like the one that was closest to it was one about. It was actually anti-animal, probably, if anything. We've got to see it first, but it's about the sunset of bullfighters in I think it's Colombia, and follows young bullfighters in training as they face not just the hardships of these animals, but also friction from the the controversy surrounding this dying sport. And so it was like, kind of like my reaction is boo-hoo for the freaking bullfighters, right? It's of course we want documentaries to be able to tell everybody's story. We want documentaries about priest pedophiles from the perspective of the priest pedophile. We want the CEO in handcuffs and his story. That's the power of the documentary. But when you come away from a film and you feel like it's somehow romanticized their situation and not just gazed, compassionately but objectively, then it feels cheap.
I don't. Yeah, I know. When Ghost was at IDFA in 2013, so IDFA is the biggest documentary film festival in the world. It's in Amsterdam, and we all went. Me and Joe and Marina and Nina, we all went to IDFA, and it was great. But the high priestess of IDFA herself said that they had, in the history of IDFA, they may have shown maybe 2 or 3 animal rights films. So it's starting, you know, and with the Blur Cinema, I know the programmer, I know all those people, and you know, Blackfish played there a number of times. Ghost played there a number of times. Cowspiracy, you should contact Cinema Politica.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's who you should contact. And I think that they've actually screened it.
And you know, when an issue is important to you, you want to see like every night
Yeah.
it being presented.
Yeah.
But and so I don't mean to malign Blur management. Partly it might just be a reflection, judging by the Hot Docs catalog.
Yeah.
If they've been casting their net fairly widely, maybe there just aren't enough animal docs being made. Period. So I was curious if you knew about anything, not to take attention away from Ghost, but anything kind of in the pipes that looks interesting to you.
Coming through the pipeline.
Where's that dog from? That dog Romanian? You know what I'm talking about? The one where they
The dogs take over.
yeah, okay, it's not the dogs.
Oh, but that's fictionalized. though.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a
It's not a
documentary.
documentary.
No. Yeah. No. Actually, I don't know of a documentary that's in production right now that's an animal rights film. I mean, I know that, you know, in the States, I know Unity is about to come out,
Yes.
right? I think this month. That's Sean Monson. He made Earthlings,
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's his next film.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, I believe this month.
We're hoping to screen that at
Yeah,
We're pretty for the March
Yeah.
fundraiser.
yeah.
It's not so much animal rights, though, is it?
No, it's intersectional.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it might be a bit disappointing for activists if they think this is going to be the next big great Earthling.
right. Well, he probably feels he already made Earthlings, so what else? You know,
Yeah.
what's he going to make next? So it's about intersectionality. So
Yes.
bringing it all together, which I think is great. It needs to
Yeah.
go there.
And we'll have no strength if we don't.
No.
Is it difficult to produce an impact report?
Sorry?
Is it required?
Is it required?
Yeah, to
No.
produce. So
No.
then you undertook this
Yeah.
because the opportunity was there.
I undertook because I really wanted to know. And it was like my kind of way of having closure and letting the baby go. But understanding how the film is actually working in the world. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to know. And now I know. You know? So what do you guys think of those statistics?
Amazing.
How many of the, I don't know if you asked this, but how many of the prior animal advocates, after watching the movie, were inspired to become more active?
Yeah.
How many of the vegans then said, now I'm an activist vegan?
Yeah, isn't that in one of the, you know what, there is information about that in the longer report. Yes.
I think about that one a lot
It-
too, because
it
I mean, we all made that
definitely-
transition, right?
It definitely it invigorates people that are already committed. Yeah.
Just curious about the community screenings, because we did a community screening. And I actually think Ghost really started that trend, more or less. Because when Cowspiracy came out, then people were ready to do smaller community screenings than I think we would have done prior. But
No,
no,
I don't think so.
No.
No. I mean, I think community screenings have been around forever. Because, you know, for documentaries, there's not a lot of opportunity for films to be shown in theaters or
Right.
to be shown on Netflix. It's hard to get into those venues. So community screenings, like church basements and classrooms
That could be just our experience. because
and
we
living
did-
rooms,
Yeah, that's libraries.
salons, you know,
Yes.
those are
Right.
common spaces where people come together and watch documentaries.
I was wondering with the impact of those opportunities where people had more opportunity to have those conversations. I was wondering if those impacts were different from a large screening. So Blackfish
More
would be an
intimate,
example
more
where
intimate.
there were fewer community screenings that I was aware of,
Yeah,
and there were more large. You went to a theater or
Yeah.
you saw it on Netflix or something. But
yeah,
I'm just curious to see
Yeah.
what that kind of impact might have been. And so, for example, for us,
Yeah.
We did not have a lot of non-vegans there,
I
which
think
actually we like.
there was one or
Because
two.
we like to have, you know, it works really well when it's 60-40, 70-30, right?
Yeah.
Because it's good for them to be in a minority, because the impact is greater. They walked away with a lot. I mean, they asked a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And I was, I think more than they would have if they had seen it at Bookshelf Cafe or at the, you know what I mean? If they had just kind of gone to a theater and walked out.
Yeah, there's something to be said about community screenings. I love them. Grassroots distribution, grassroots screenings. It's so intimate, and there's you know, here's a good concrete way of answering that question. So when we did our theatrical release, we were allowed to do 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. That's it. And then you're being ushered out, literally. But with community screenings, sometimes it was like an hour or longer, sitting together and talking and hearing people rant and rave, and people can have an emotional response, and it's much more reflective, because Ghosts does inspire that reflection, and it does inspire an emotional response. There's always someone that's teary, and you know, you don't want to jolt them out of it. It's a safe place for people to have their feelings and have their response, and that's important. You know, like when people would say, "Oh, sorry," and they're, you know, it's like, no, don't be sorry. Like, this is what this is about. It's okay to feel, and it's important to feel. That's actually the first step. We need to feel much more than we do for animals. We need to feel for them. So the community screenings environment fostered that. Yeah.
Has Joanne MacArthur seen the impact report?
Not yet. Yeah.
I wonder what you anticipate might be the reaction.
Oh, she'll love it. Actually, she did see the small one briefly, but I don't think she's seen the big one yet. I look forward to her taking a look at it. She's really busy. I don't want to pressure her, but she'll watch it. I mean, she'll look at it soon. Yeah.
Are you planning on doing more follow-ups with these people, like, you know,
No.
like a year, 2, 3?
No. I'll leave that to the. That's like
Yeah.
that kind of long-term report is actually something that the Humane Research Council. Were you guys aware of that? They released it in December. It was controversial because a lot of activists were angry about it. But it was qualitative, quantitative research. And they conducted it, I think, over several years. And what it said is that only 5% of vegans and vegetarians remain vegans and vegetarians. And people go back to eating meat. And there were animal rights activists that were angry that they put the report out, and they're like, well, no, we need to learn from it.
Yeah.
And I asked him to create sort of a benchmark sort of analysis for this impact report. And I said, you know, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but do you think that a film like this can help with the long term? And he said yes, and so it's a paragraph that he wrote, right? Because of its approach. Because people are often, I think, I haven't read the whole report, but you can go to their website, the Humane Research Council, and it's downloadable. Were you guys familiar with it before? Was anyone here familiar with it? You were nodding? Okay. Yeah. So they did that because they wanted to know, and everyone wants to know, all these different campaigns that animal groups are engaged in. They want to know what the long-term effects are, right? The effectiveness or lack of effectiveness of these campaigns. And so they did the research.
Well, it seems to back up the idea that intersectionality is the key, right? Because people remained vegan predominantly when they were vegan for multiple reasons. Ethics and diet and environment. That was one of the key learnings from that. Is that
you're right.
if you only go at forks over knives, for instance, or you only go with cowspiracy, which is environment, then those people are less likely to stay. So you want to, I mean, ethical vegans were the longest anyway.
Of course, yeah.
But if you can get So the learnings would be, how do you, like what I'm thinking of when I see this is, because we can no longer get these people, like, how do we as activists keep this journey going for these people on the right-hand side, right? Because it's kind of like our job then, the film has done its job.
Yeah.
I see our job as keeping this happening, so that these people don't fall off. That.
Yeah.
Vegan cliff.
So there are laws in the books pertaining, let's suppose, on cruelty against animals, and maybe other sets of laws. Has any group of lawmakers seen the film, and would they have become interested in making laws?
Yeah. So the Animal Legal Defense Fund have you heard of them?
Yeah.
Okay, so they've been in some ways our biggest partner, to be honest, like more than Farm Sanctuary actually. Just because they have so many student campus groups, like over 100 and some, I don't even remember how many, lots. And all of them have screened the film.
All of them.
Yeah. Almost all of them, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And, they flew me in, I was on a panel with the Cowspiracy filmmakers at an animal law conference in Portland last fall. And yeah, the Animal Legal Defense Fund, it's basically an umbrella of lawyers. They're super smart. I was at that conference, I was like the filmmaker, me and the other guy, Kip, sitting there going, wow, these people are really smart. It's like a huge room of lawyers, and with all their PowerPoints and talking about, all the loopholes and how to make change and how to go at it from a legal perspective, and it was just fascinating. Yeah.
Is this a follow-up? What's the next steps for
For what?
you?
For me?
Yeah.
Well, I just released this today. So I need a nap. So I'm figuring out what my next film is right now. I can't talk about it yet, sorry. Soon.
I felt like when the movie was over that it just started. So you have to have the next one, which continues the story and goes deeper. Now you have
A sequel.
audience, and now you can show heavier stuff too.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I really felt like, what? The movie just started. I wanted to stay home. And
then for
when
some
I knew only the title, so I didn't really know what's all about it. And I had an image of what that is. It was different,
Yeah.
but yeah, it
Well, yeah, I
that's
mean,
your next.
it is a gentle film, and for a lot of the viewers that were actually even for a lot of advocates, the film was really heavy and haunting and overwhelming and too much. So it was really, the greatest challenge in making the film was finding that balance. So for some people it's too soft, and then for so many people it's almost too much. So
I don't think too much is bad though.
no. But there were people that they didn't want to look away though. They didn't want to look away, and
That's why in small doses,
yeah, the drama, the horror, it's important. It's definitely important.
Well, when you know what happens to the animals, then really seeing their full subjective being as is revealed in the movie, that's horrifying.
Yeah,
Right? That's where so you can get numb, like with any kind of pornography,
Totally.
pornography of violence, to just like the slaughterhouse workers, to seeing the video of the slaughtering, and a movie like this is actually more powerful.
I think so. Because it's also not re-traumatizing the animals, right? And objectifying them and using them to traumatize others.
Yeah.
I didn't want to take that course. And It's just not my style to do that. But there has to be an edge, there has to be drama, there has to be the haunting, dramatic element, always. Right? But it's hard, it was hard to do. It's like, with human rights advocacy campaigns, there's like this misery porn where they show children with flies around their faces and things. I don't like that. I don't like it. I think there's a better way and a more effective way of telling that story. Not to say that we shouldn't look and we shouldn't see that. It's the same. I'm drawing exactly the same thing as a parallel. But I just like to tell it differently. So.
I guess you could say that movie's about the ghost and not about the machine.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the slide with all the stats about the total number of viewers, etc.?
Total views?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you going to add it all up?
Well, I wanted to... Okay, so... wasn't there a total number of viewers somewhere? Or... Oh.
Which one?
Yeah, I was looking for a total number of viewers. I guess we have to...
No, we don't have that.
Okay.
Do you want to add it up?
Yes, so yeah, so how many people per community screening? I want to calculate 40%
okay.
or 41% of your total number of viewers. So the
I know, we don't have that.
transitions or something.
I know, because I don't know how many people were at every screening. That's why we didn't do it.
Okay, that's it. So I guess that...
I mean, we could average it out. You could say that on average there were 70 people.
Right.
Right? Because a lot of screenings there were 300 people, a lot of screenings there were 10 people. So it did seem like the average screening was between 50 and 100.
Yeah.
So you want to do the math?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Start doing the math.
Okay, thanks.
Let's look at that 6 continents. Doesn't include Antarctica.
No.
So we should keep in mind if we were with Antarctica to watch a movie there to have like 100% completion.
But I was in Iceland.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
We just need to screen it to some penguins.
Can you go back to the other screen? When I'm looking at the numbers, 47, 40, and 14, which is basically are statistics about the three different aspects of exploitation that you explore in the movie, which is the dog's case with animal experimentation, the mink farms, I think, and the farm animals. The numbers seem to be more or less what we expect as activists, as the type of exploitation that seems to resonate more with people is the cosmetic testing, for instance, as more than fur, as more than food. And I was wondering if the storytelling behind these 3 different aspects, have people comment on one that has resonated more with them, or I was just wondering if these numbers are pretty much what would you expect, or was there a story, one of those stories that was more, you had more comments on, like it was more touching to people?
Yeah, everyone talks about the food issue. It touches the rawest nerve for everyone.
Yeah.
Especially the non-vegans. Everyone talks about food.
And yet that doesn't represent the numbers.
No, that's the hardest one. It's the hardest one to change. Is food, yeah. It is. It's the hardest one.
That's
So no
where
matter how well
they
we
feel guilty, because everybody eats.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me that regarding the cosmetic experimentation, and also for some people, like the fur, it's not that it's easier for people to get mobilized on those issues because it's not seen as that drastic of a behavioral change. Because, for example, my best friend, she showed the film to her mom, and after watching the film, like, she was really upset about the parts with the fur farm, which I thought were some of the most graphic in the film, and her immediate reaction was just to chuck all her fur hats in the garbage, which was great. But then but then But then at the same time, like, it still remains very hard for people to be that mobilized about the food issue because it's just something that's so naturalized. And like for example, like my friend said that when her mom saw the parts on the dairy farm, her response was to say, "Oh, I hate factory farming," but I don't know, people still assume that there are these happy farms out there that doesn't resemble.
Yeah.
The farm is a factory.
Yeah.
The farm has always been a factory.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
I really like the 11%. But it's really hard to get people out from behind computer screens sort of doing anything.
But those are the non-vegans, right? Maybe among the vegans,
Yeah,
some of them
yeah.
decided to become more active.
That's actually really good. 11% of non-vegans is a
The
lot.
thing is that when people become vegan, not everybody becomes vegan just because they saw a movie. It starts something. And then they sort of stagnate, they think about then some other information is coming in, and finally they see the whole picture. I think that maybe we are not aware, but it didn't just hit us. It seems like it hits you just at once. Because
It takes
then
years for
everything
some people.
opens
It
up.
took
and
me
it's-
years.
It's a gradual
Years.
thing when you understand certain
Yeah.
aspects and then all comes together and then it's light bulb.
It took me over 20 years of being vegetarian to go vegan. And I would become a lazy vegetarian too, you know. So what changed me was committing myself to the research and learning and making the film. I went vegan making the film. So
I think people have to be touched with their heart, that's the main thing. The rationalizing, we can have all the information and we won't change, but if we are touched in our heart, we just can't do it.
yeah.
And 11% is pretty, remember that's 1 month after watching, so,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
with the steps, you know, it might become more.
Do you ever think about, maybe partly through Miranda's influence, the magical dimension of what you did? That, well, maybe I'm preparing for my own lecture next week, and I'm going into some very crazy places. But conspiracy theory and everything. But when I recently watched Ghosts, I was hesitant to watch it. I had a feeling that it would be worse than a movie like Hercules for me, in terms of being very hard to watch. And I was right, but it's a testament to its power. But I got the sense when I was watching it that, I mean, this is, you call it, it's a portrait of Joanne. In part, that's the narrative kind of backbone of it. And she's doing this kind of surveillance work. She's going into these places and taking high-quality photographs of these sites. And she's aware she's doing it in part for the future, as a document for the future. And you can also think of it as a document for, I don't know what, but I always think of that the contact in Carl Sagan's, or Bob Zemeckis' Contact, where the vegans, they're from, starts with Vega, the vegans, they send back, they beam back to Earth, which is horrifying at first. You know, the broadcast of the opening of the Berlin Games in 1936, I think, and shows Hitler there at the podium, you know, and they're like, wow, we're going to be invaded by super black Nazis. And no, they were beaming back the first reception they had received. Say we were watching and we received, you know, at the speed of light. Now we received it back, and I'm not talking about the alien analog of cows who left their beings here on Earth under our care and are coming back to kick our asses watching this movie. And it's something like that being a cartoonish metaphor for something interesting that might be going on kind of cosmically, where you participated in some kind of surveillance work in marking these sites. And then you open up these sites, even if you don't list them, with geo coordinates in the credits, you've opened up these sites for action. I feel like that's a lot of the power of Anita's work, where, you can see, I don't know how carefully Anita thought it all through, but it's kind of like, these trucks are going there, so I'm going to go there and just put my eyes on the scene. And look at what that did. Suddenly all these other arms and eyes and legs gather around that and start. They don't just stand and watch. I mean, they do that too, but other things start to happen too once you start to look at the site. So, I mean, a lot of today's presentation was focused on the numbers, the very public effect of the film. And I also wonder about some of the interesting private, almost magical effects that the film can have, like on one person, or on just the right person needs to watch it, and this then becomes surveillance work for the lunch counter moment, or the back of the bus.
That's a
moment.
great idea.
Yeah.
Like to just do an impact report based on one person
Yeah.
over 20 years.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Somewhat like not a novelization of the movie, but another work of art, a very subjective work of art that is inspired by the movie, would be like that. It wouldn't be survey and quantitative, qualitative,
Yeah.
and subjective.
Well, we did gather qualitative response.
Right.
The open-ended questions are. Maybe I should gather them all together and publish them to the film's
Yeah,
website.
that would be great.
Really?
Yeah.
We like to read that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes us still connected and not alone.
Okay.
Even a book with the long journey of the making of the movie, and then everything else, the unexpected results.
Yeah.
But
I hope you guys all download
and
the longer one. The longer one is much more narrative, more in-depth. So, yeah.
I thought maybe we've talked about this before, but using the human protagonist type of, even though the film is really about these other individuals as much as it is about Joanne, I thought that was really effective for non-vegans. I know when I became vegan, it was one of the TPS videos, the water one, the heat one. But I think at that time, it was seeing the reactions on the faces of the people that had as much an impact, or if not more, than seeing the pigs, because at that stage, I had not seen pigs.
No.
So I couldn't tell a happy pig from a sad pig. And most people can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can now. Now I can tell a lot of things about pigs. And roosters, for that matter. I can tell a very happy rooster from an unhappy rooster. But in those days, I couldn't. And I think Joanne was perfect because, as you're saying, Paul, there's a part where she talks about the walking away. The hardest part is, the quote, is leaving. And I think that had a huge impact on some of the non-vegan people I saw watching the film. When they saw the animals that were being used as food, they saw it, but they didn't see it through vegan eyes. And they kind of felt a little bit, but they couldn't get it in the same way as they did the zoo animals. So they'd come to me and say, the wildlife, they could totally connect to.
Yeah.
But Joanne they could connect to. So Joanne's pain, Joanne's difficulty.
Well, that's the power of storytelling,
that was
right?
really smart.
So that's why, when you see a film, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, or read a book, and there's a protagonist, the magic and the essence of that experience of following that protagonist, and you enter the realm of that person's vision of the world, it's a window into a new way of seeing, right? So really what The Ghost in Our Machine is it's a journey for a broad audience into seeing the world as a vegan.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yes.
Without, of course, telling people that,
Yes.
but that's what it is.
And Joanne's heroic too, so it's I think
People
a lot of
relate to her,
Yes.
they want her
Yeah.
to succeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she's also, she's not perfect in the film, she's kind of struggling, and she right in the first act, she talks about having PTSD. You know, so people, the average viewer has empathy for Joanne.
Yes. Yes.
So immediately, empathy is ignited, and then you're in that empathy space. It's not a film about empathy. It's about dwelling in empathy. So it's like the film actually embodies empathy through Joanne's empathy, and she triggers that empathy for the audience, and Joanne has empathy for all the animals. So through your empathy for Joanne, you actually have empathy for the animals, right? So there's these layers to that experience. But that's storytelling, right? Even though it's not sort of a traditional story arc with a climax and a conclusion, you know, it's very open-ended. There's no conclusion, actually. It's an open-ended film. It leaves you with a question. Yeah, so... I don't know what my next film is yet, but I will let you know soon. I'm waiting to hear from someone. That's why I can't talk about it.
What about part 2?
Yeah, well... No.
Part 2 should be yours, and it should be about the intergalactic cows sending us back.
We'll see if the blur some up fun.
Are there any other questions about the actual report?
Oh, about the actual
Report? Anything? Or you were going to ask something?
It was more to do with the content of the film than with the actual report, though.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because we were having the discussion about how the viewer eventually makes it to feeling empathy for these animals by empathizing with Joanne and the emotional suffering that she's very clearly undergoing doing this work. And I found that very, very interesting because, like, any kind of distress that we feel, like seeing animals suffering, seeing animals in pain, like that's something that we're constantly forced to repress all the time in this society. And I recently wrote a paper that touched on that theme a bit, and if we go back to, if we go back to Freud and what he thought about the possible origin of the feeling of being demon haunted, the feeling of being like possessed by ghosts, by other entities, that sort of obsession, and he suggests that it's because we sense something like within us, like whether that's like unconscious impulses or just something we're not really aware of, because it's something that's coming from within us, but also sometimes something that is at the same time outside of us. It's something it's perceived as coming outside of us, so it's something that we're constantly forced to repress, like something that we're forced to not look at as part of ourselves. And I think there's a clear parallel with the animals, because the animals are perceived as alien to us, but in so many ways they're so remarkably similar. I mean, in all the ways that matter ethically. And that attracts revulsion, that attracts fascination, it attracts empathy as well. And the title of the film is so perfect, The Ghost in Our Machine, because it really is something that we're haunted by in the sense that Freud was talking about. Like, if we believe that like there is an unconscious, like it's something that we're constantly repressing, that we're kind of possessed by, and it's coming out. And I thought just the choice of the song at the end, to Give Up the Ghost by Radiohead, I thought that was just perfect. Just reminds me of all those themes.
Yeah.
Was there an impact on Farm Sanctuary from this film? I was curious.
Sorry?
Was there an impact for Farm Sanctuary? Like, the film has a sort of
It would be great to...
a hug and a slap quality.
Yeah.
Right, we slap you, then we shoot Farm Sanctuary. And so Farm Sanctuary was not the only place, but it's one of those warm spots in the film, and I was wondering if that had an effect on them, or...
Yeah, so, it would be great to actually know the ways in which it's had an actual effect.
Right.
But I've asked, I don't know that they know, but I know that it's, increased their membership, more people go there. Fanny
Look
and
them
Sunny
up
are
or look them up
famous.
and-
Yeah.
Like everyone wants to meet Fanny and Sunny. Fanny's the leader of the special needs herd. Yeah. And isn't that cute? It's so cute. And Sunny is like Susie's favorite son. Like she can't live without him. So pretty cool. No, but it's the tone and the style, the messaging of the film is very much, there's a synergy with how Farm Sanctuary actually likes to meet people where they are, and the film does that too. So they like
It's
it.
a good
Fit. They really like the film for that reason, yeah.
What was the reaction of your fellow documentary filmmakers?
Fellow documentary filmmakers, yeah. So most of them are probably non-vegan people who, they all saw it. And I think, most people really were impacted by it. Yeah.
Chris Hedges went vegan recently, didn't he?
Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah.
Making the film that they're making. Yeah, they're making Unlocking the Cages, which is the story of the lawyer Stephen Wise. Can't wait for that film. It's Pennebaker. You know Pennebaker, who made Don't Look Back, the Dylan film? Yeah, I can't wait for this film. Oh, so you asked what other film is being, someone asked about another film that film is being made. It's following that legal case, and Stephen Wise is the protagonist. That's going to be an amazing film. Probably like his swan song or something. Like they're in their 70s or something, 80s maybe. Yeah.
Well, you were talking about Chris Hedges. When I saw the name Chris Hedges, at first I thought it was a typo for Chris Hedges, and I realized is that Pennebaker's partner?
They're filmmaking partners.
Okay, yeah. So, but you were talking about Chris Hedges.
But I think Chris is actually a woman. Pretty sure.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking Chris Hedges, the journalist.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about these guys. Okay.
Yeah, because when I first saw them, I
Yes.
thought it was a typo for Chris Hedges.
You're
as
right.
well.
No, it's not a typo. You're right. He did. He did.
There's an article on Truth that
Yes.
That's amazing, and for ethical reasons. Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were talking about those guys.
I actually couldn't. Need better glasses.
Okay. Yeah.
I've watched your documentary Near Death Experience, or out-of-body experience, out-of-body. And maybe if you can connect some of the other making part to be possibly then connect those two. The ghost, the real ghost.
About the spirits of all the billions of animals?
Somehow the other.
No.
Or maybe a haunted slaughterhouse or something.
Oh God. I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm interested in, has anyone read Circles of Compassion?
I was just reading it today.
Are you?
Yeah.
I'm interested in making this into a film.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, interviewing the people who wrote the essays?
No, well, just having different chapters,
Yeah.
different essays.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one idea that I'm looking at.
Oh, it's an excellent book, yeah. And each essay is a different aspect.
I know.
It's really well treated, yeah.
Yeah.
I was reading Climate Change and Injustice Everywhere by Sailesh Rao.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. I'm just starting to read it, so.
Would this be
Are you guys reading it?
Yeah, would this be Peter Singer's children? Peter Singer. I'm suggesting a title like that.
Oh, I see.
Right. Definitely Will Tuttle is one of the most charismatic writers and speakers. Another one who's also very contentious, who Anita and I were watching at our climate meeting yesterday, is the very controversial figure
Gary
Yourofsky. Gary Yourofsky, and who really is one of the most powerful speakers around.
Yeah.
And he's done his talk so many hundreds of times.
Yeah.
And he manages to improvise into different directions, and yet he obviously has a very, very interesting life story, and I wonder if anyone's ever thought of treating that cinema. And he can't come to Canada because of some infraction he committed here.
He released some links.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah.
He says some horrible things. Even on the
But he said,
You know, very early in
he
his
said some
career,
really disgusting things though.
I mean, about
women,
Palestinian people that they are the worst.
That women that wear fur
He's
should be
there
raped
in
1,000
1 week.
times.
that is so
Like so hateful, he would poke out there.
He has so much
They
rage.
deserve
He has
to
too much
die.
anger. I'm not attracted to that.
Yeah, I thought that was more early in his
Yeah.
activism career, because I mean now he's mostly speaking to students, and he seems to have a much mellower approach.
No, he's not.
You don't think so?
Not there, but
Palestinians. I thought that was more recent though.
Is it?
That was particularly
I can say
Yeah, do.
it's
Yeah.
horrible, and it's a New York animal rights group. They put out a statement that violence has no place in animal rights. Like,
Well,
you have to call him out. He has a responsibility. He's a big public figure, and he cannot just let it loose because he's angry.
But his talks are totally anti-violent. And he's,
Yes.
I mean,
He's playing a role. I think he's somewhere deranged. Yes, he is brilliant, but he has a psychological problem.
But you can't deny that he's one of the most charismatic speakers
Yeah,
ever on animal rights.
Hitler was good too. In some respects, I'm not denying the good things that he did, but somebody who has this problem and he cannot contain, hateful speech, that has it's dangerous. It's dangerous to the movement too.
Okay. Impact report question?
I do, because you have the educational piece, the educational package with Ghost, right? Because that's not the right.
The guide, yeah.
The guide.
Yeah.
Are you going to be tying in the impact report to that educational
To the guide, like merging it?
Yeah,
Well,
I'm merging it, or, because I'm thinking, I'm not really sure, excuse me, my voice is gone. The guide, when it's targeted, I know that it's targeted to schools and things like that as well, but
Yeah.
I would think higher level,
Yeah.
would this be the kind of, some of this information something that you would want to tie into the guide as well?
Oh, definitely. I mean, they're two separate documents.
Yes.
But they're on the website. They're available right next to each other. So people, But yes, it's for educators and learners
So
everywhere.
even like a key or a summaries document or something like that,
that would be good to have a summary
Yeah.
document. Oh God.
sorry.
Yeah.
The baby's always great.
Actually, you know what? The educational guide would be a great presentation. I would come back whenever down the road you're looking for someone, because it's 52 pages and I wouldn't go through every single page, but it was a collaborative, amazing process working with academics, scientists, lawyers, and activists to put it together. Carrie Cronin, PhD, edited the guide. Same designer as the impact report, Deb Orzarko. And wow, I mean, the contributors like Bruce Friedrich and Lori Marino and Joyce Tischler, who founded the Animal Legal Defense Fund, Antoine Goitel, who is a Swiss lawyer who started the global animal law. So there's many perspectives and it all comes together. And then there's a summary on the history of the animal rights movement and ethos. So it's a great report as well, and I would be happy to bring it in and present it. Yeah, good idea. I know that's not what you said, but
No,
but
it ties in.
it ties in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just about the numbers of all the different countries and where it was seen. Did you get any pushback where you wanted it to be in a certain country or a certain festival or something where you had a lot of pushback? And they just
Or
wouldn't let you?
just rejection.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
A lot? Or?
A lot, no, but a good example is We really wanted a distributor in Australia. Australia has a really strong animal rights movement. Really strong. And so at the grassroots, there's demand for the film now. So we thought, oh God, well we need to get it into the schools there. It should be released on DVD there, and it should be on digital platforms. And I literally pitched every frickin' distributor in Australia. And in the end, they just didn't want to invest in the film, because that's what distributors do. They invest a little bit to, make a DVD or to, promote it and get it out there so that they can make money. That's what it comes down to. And no one wanted it. So there were instances like that in a number of places where we ended up just doing it ourselves.
Were there any ties to the countries that were portrayed within the film? So the fur farm that's in...
Can't say. It's in Europe. No one's allowed to say where it is. It's just a legal thing. It's in Europe. And we went several places in Europe. It's not just one place. Yeah. So...
Did you get any kind of...
No, we don't have a distributor. The only distributor that we have in Europe is Italy, and they haven't done anything with the film. So, pathetic.
How do you feel about the fact that it's out there as a torrent? It's a torrent file. I just checked.
Oh yeah. You mean with the? What do you mean?
To download it.
The download machine is a torrent out there. It's illegal. You can download it as a torrent.
Oh, I know.
How do you feel about that?
It's 2 years old. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
But as a way of getting to
It's
people
fine.
in different countries.
Yeah.
It's good.
If they
It's fine.
enjoy it,
I mean, in our first year, we were trying to avoid that because the first year of a film, when you're doing outreach and engagement, your premieres are really important, and getting the right distribution and also the right critics to review it. But you know what? It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's everywhere for free online. Yeah. And we also have it on iTunes for $7 or whatever in every single country practically, in 5 languages. So it's available.
It might be it's huge somewhere through peer-to-peer downloading. I've ever seen a small sci-fi movie indie called The Man from Earth.
Oh yeah.
The Man from Earth.
Yeah.
And apparently, I think they had trouble getting distribution, little or none, and they found out a little bit afterwards, the producers afterwards, that it had been like an exploding phenomenon. This was probably during the height of peer-to-peer downloading, and it had a huge kind of community of fans who'd all acquired it through peer-to-peer. And that wasn't something that their systems of distribution and accounting were able to keep track of.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious with this report, like
Yeah.
how much is going on through?
Oh, yeah, that we don't
sharing
that we don't even
Right.
know about. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah. True.
I mean, there are a lot of people like under the age of 30 who just do not buy movies.
Yeah.
They don't buy movies
I know.
at all,
That-
and they
you
find
know
it-
what? We should have factored that into the report, and we didn't. I don't know why, but we didn't.
It'd be hard to.
Yeah, it might be hard too.
I don't know. Let me think about it, because I remember reading something about how to gather data on to get stats on that consumption. So
Peer-to-peer,
yeah, so I've been thinking of trying to get an estimate how many people may have downloaded this movie through unofficial channels.
Okay.
I'm sure it's
You're gonna look into
feasible. I'm not sure it's feasible. Then I'm gonna look into it.
Thank you.
It wouldn't be that hard. I mean, just to search on different torrent sites and then see how many downloads there are.
Yeah.
I'll fund you, Bernard. I'll give you $50.
We'll see if it's required.
Thanks, Bernard.
But I noticed that in your report you have numbers of views on Vimeo. You have
No what?
numbers of views on Vimeo.
Vimeo.
No views?
Numbers of views.
Yeah, we do.
On Vimeo.
Yeah. Saying
Yeah,
he knows that.
Oh,
That's in your report. So they didn't
He's
see any
right.
DVD sales or sales on iTunes, etc.
yeah, because there's hardly anyone that buys it on iTunes. So it wasn't worth, wasn't worth talking about.
The
It's
libraries,
like 100 people, or I don't know, something pathetic.
did libraries bought
Yeah.
a copy?
Yes. Yeah, so, yeah, we didn't attempt to tally up the number of viewers. And even though, of course, it would be an estimate, it would be a good, interesting exercise though. And it's true, it would have been a good thing to have them there.
And maybe they can track it out how many times they took it out from the library.
Well, it's in so many libraries.
Unique views.
Yeah,
You'd have to call every library.
That'd be multiple years, I think.
I'm just
Even in the
that's
Toronto
makes a
system,
lot of sense.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And then there's the people, you know, that buy the DVD and then play it over and over again or show their family.
Or they love it.
Like you can't measure these things. It's like, you can't. That's why, oh, it's not that. That's why the page about the number of cities was more interesting.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's Netflix USA also. So do you have any numbers for that?
No, they don't give them.
Okay. Well, yeah.
That's interesting.
Also
They don't
national
give-
broadcast.
We have 5 national broadcasters.
So I suppose it's kind of hard.
Did
to
you
get numbers
download
for
the,
that.
the big one?
I was
Okay,
looking
good.
at it now.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so with the broadcasters, we have 5 national broadcasters, Brazil, Netherlands, Canada,
Finland,
US, and
Canada.
Finland. So I contacted all the broadcasters and only 3 gave numbers. So I couldn't put those numbers and not the other numbers, so I left it blank. I just said 5 national broadcasters, right? So it's a lot. Hundreds of thousands. Do you guys want to go for a drink?
Maybe we can wrap up here.
Yeah, let's wrap up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Thanks, guys.
we got to wrap up.
I don't know how to like. I don't know how to do that.
So, go ahead.